Aloha inspired moneymakers. I'm Andy, your host and financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. Welcome back to another episode of Inspired Money, the live stream podcast. Today we're talking about vintage dreams, revving up the classic car collecting experience. This episode promises to be a thrilling ride into the world of classic automobiles. Now, I'm not a collector myself, but I love that cars carry stories and nostalgia. For many people, it brings back a time when they were younger, maybe a first car, which was most likely sold many years ago. And then today, they want to buy another one to replace it. They're also fun to drive. We're going to explore the artistry, investment potential, and the vibrant communities that surround these timeless treasures. So buckle up as we dive into the captivating realm of classic car collecting, where every curve tells a story and every ride is a step back in time. Let's welcome in our panelists. I'm going to start with Ed Bolian. He's the founder of VinWiki, a platform that brings automotive stories to life through crowdsourced data. As a former record-setting Cannonball Run participant, Ed's passion for cars and storytelling shines through in his engaging narratives. Ed's YouTube channels for VinWiki and his personal account are amazing. He has over 2 million subscribers. Ed, you've had the entrepreneurial bug for a long time. Did you start an exotic car rental company while at Georgia Tech?
I did back in 2006 when debt was a little bit easier to find and stated income loans existed for Lamborghinis even as a 20-year-old.
All right. I think that Bradley, our producer, is having trouble controlling cameras. So I'm going to be seeing if I can rub my stomach and pat my head at the same time.
All good. Thanks for having me.
It's great that you can join us. Glad to have you here. Let me bring myself up. Garrett Reed started the American Muscle HD Instagram account also while in college. He's a 10-year overnight success story with over 2.4 million followers on that account. His influence has won him brand deals, provided access to industry events, and he even got car parts to rebuild a 1984 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS. Garrett, did you ever think that this could become your full-time job?
Not at all. When I first started it, I just started it kind of out of intrigue and curiosity, with no real direction, because social media was still brand new. The only social media platform really was MySpace and Facebook. So not at all did I have any intention for it to turn into what it is today. But, I took my passion, and as I kept learning about what the platform was and what it could offer, I just kept doing what I could do and meeting people as I went to events, and here I am. So
that is really cool. It's cool that you could turn something that you just were doing for fun into a job and a profession.
100%. 100%.
Our next panelist. Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so glad that you could join us. Ray Kuntz is a very good friend of mine. I credit him and his wife, Barb, for introducing me to the world of cars. Years ago, he invited me and my wife to Syracuse National, where we saw a ton of cars, burnouts, and flame-throwing hot rods. Ray, tell us about the car that you cruise around in right now. Well, I think you might be muted or don't have audio.
Huh?
Oh, there you are. We can hear you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I have a 63 Plymouth convertible Fury. It's powder blue, nice interior. It's got a 440 motor, so nice exhaust pipe, so because I like to hear it. So.
And sometimes you are Santa Claus.
Oh yes, yeah, about 10, 12 times last year. Yeah, it's fun.
I think I'm going to have a little bit of an inferiority complex tonight because I don't have facial hair and have trouble growing anything worth there's nothing respectable growing it.
It can be more of a headache than it's worth sometimes. Don't worry.
I'm creeping up on you, Santa.
And then Rounding out our panel tonight, we have Nicky Baldelli Boni back in the house. Last time he was with us, he was sharing his passion for wine. Nicky lives in Tuscany. As everyone will remember, or if you don't remember, you'll see that Nicky is a cultural Italian gentleman who lives in Tuscany, and he can trace his family roots there for over 900 years.
Wow.
Today, he's talking about cars because, Nicky, tell us about Cars in Tuscany, the channel that you're going to be launching next week.
Well, yeah, first thing, I have 300 followers, so suck it, all of you. Apart from that, I decided that I was a little bored during the winter and I had time, so I found a group of guys who really wanted to launch something, and I wanted to open a channel for fun because we're doing this for fun, and we're reviewing classic, modern classic, and supercars whenever we can get our hands on them, in exclusive locations in Tuscany. So we start out in front of a nice villa or a renowned place. We present a car. It's always lighthearted. There's a lot of sass and a lot of banter. And then we drive it, give our impressions. The episodes are 10 to 12 minutes max. We don't want to be boring. And it all starts November 22nd. And we hope people will like it.
Well, let's show your trailer because
I'm honored
really
that you would
cool.
show my. I'm honored that you would show my trailer.
Yeah, let's check it out. Nice. What was that? Was that a Fiat passing you?
That was an old Panda, and people will think that that was staged. It wasn't. We were going so slow because, and you guys know this, if you film with cars, people think you do ridiculous things at incredible speeds. Almost always people are honking at you because you're going slowly. And I had seen this lady in the rearview mirror for about a couple of minutes, and she just got ticked off. She put the turn signal on and overtook the Ferrari in a second, and we kept it because it was a good moment.
That's awesome.
Well,
That's
awesome. That's just a taste of what's to come, because it seems like a blend of beautiful cars, beautiful scenery, comedy. I hope that you find some time to squeeze in some food and drink, because then you'll have like the trifecta, putting everything together.
Obviously, we can't really, as much as I enjoy my wine and everything else, we have a very strict policy about that on the program, and we are all fun-loving people. But if the key is in the ignition, there's lots of wine, there's lots of cheese and cold cuts and pasta and all that. But the wine we open later. But yes, we will whenever we can.
Very fair. Drink responsibly. Mm-hmm. So with that, I'm excited to have the panelists here. Let's go straight to segment one. In the tapestry of time, classic cars are not mere machines. They are the epitome of form and innovation. Each curve and chrome whisper tales of the past. The sleek lines of the '57 Chevy and the bold fins of a Cadillac Eldorado embody the spirit of their times, a moving sculpture of Art Deco elegance and mid-century modern futurism. Envision the maestros like Harley Earl and Pinin Farina, who crafted not just cars, but steel legacies. These icons harmonized aerodynamics with artistry, creating more than vehicles. They forged cultural statements. In the heart of classic car collecting lies a trove of ingenuity and history, a celebration of craftsmanship that fuels the passions of enthusiasts, preserving the joy of motoring for posterity. Join us in honoring these timeless marvels, the masterpieces that continue to ignite the collector's spirit, safeguarding a legacy of design and the exhilarating essence of driving. This is the allure of classic cars. Garrett, can you get us started from your perspective as a muscle car guy? How do you see the design evolution of American muscle cars influencing modern automotive design?
Well, I'll be honest. I think it's safe to say that the one vehicle that I think a lot of people can, it's distinctly tell that there's a correlation of modern, like the current design to the old, is the Challenger. Um, Dodge did a phenomenal job with the late model Challenger in '09 when they introduced it, '08, '09 to obviously this last model year, 2023. It had the most distinct, obvious, design characteristics from the original 70. Um, and I think that's why it had so much allure to sales too, because it didn't take too much thinking to see, like, okay, where in the body lines, or what little design cues did they bring back from, like, let's say, like the Mustang with the fastback into the new body styles. They just went straight for it. They have the headlights from the 70. It was just very obvious. So I think Dodge did the best job of that. A lot of the other ones you kind of have to put in. You have to put your creative cap on a little bit to find those little bitty cues that they did, because they're there for all the other cars, but they're just not as obvious as, say, like the Challenger.
Yeah, that's a good one. I do feel like when I look at old pictures, or you see like the cars driving around in Cuba today, I feel like there's just an absence of unique design that the cars used to have. It's like the character and what makes them special. Ray, can you talk a little? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, Andy. Go ahead.
I was going to ask Ray, growing up, what cars did you love, and how does that affect cars that you like now?
Well, I kind of like the cars now that I grew up with. My first car was a 55 Ford, $200. That was around 1964.
Oh, crap.
That accidentally wasn't my fault, but it got totaled. So that was a 55 Ford. My second car was a 46 Ford, which I really liked. It had a flathead with dual Hollywood mufflers, had a spotlight that really worked. So it was a fun car. $250.
200 or $250.
I want a Hollywood muffler too.
So Nikki, Nikki, you showed me a preview. Let me see that. What is that?
It's a T bucket.
Oh,
a double
nice.
bucket, actually, it's called.
Nice.
Yeah. It was my first car about 35 years ago. My first street rod, I should say. It was about $6,000, $6,500. Went to Ohio to buy it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Well, you're going to be the senior statesman among us, since you bought your first car for $200.
Yeah. So I like street rods.
Ed, can you talk a little bit about how VinWiki started and how it plays into the storytelling aspect of cars?
Absolutely.
Today?
Yeah, so we started VinWiki as a crowdsourced version of Carfax, the idea being that stakeholders, anybody that knew anything about a car's history or its past, could contribute materially to a timeline of what the car is and what it means. And when we see these cars that become significant, obviously there are criteria like rarity and power and performance and aesthetics and things like that we do always see correlate with long-term value. But beyond that, if any of these cars have a significant owner or used in a significant way, featured in a significant movie or story, it just totally transforms the way that a market or an audience of any type can perceive it. And so regardless of the age of the car and regardless of the value of the car, we just tried to build a way for people to attach themselves and their stories to the car, and by the VIN or by the license plate on our app. And then we have a YouTube channel that really blows it up into a longer form style.
So you're just getting a lot more detail than a Carfax.
That's the idea. I mean, this is not the same kind of institutional data that you would get from insurance companies and police reports and body shops and things like that. I mean, this is really how the cars are used. If a car is used in a crime and the license plate's in a frame of a newspaper story, it'll be in our app within 5 minutes. And so we've got about 500,000 users that are constantly searching for new and interesting information about any cars they can find. And it kind of becomes a giant living and breathing database of information that that lives alongside Carfax or AutoCheck or Experian and things like this, just to be an interesting information source, and at times, pretty entertaining.
Can you talk a little bit about the cars that you love? I see more than one Lamborghini, and you worked there for a while too. So
I did. Yeah, I was the director of sales at Lamborghini Atlanta from 2009 to 2015. And so I love Italian cars, British sports cars as well. I mean, I grew up, in the late 90s, early 2000s, playing the video games and watching the movies of the time. And so, there's something that can just never be cooler to anyone than the cars that were awesome when they were, say, 15 to 20 years old. And so I was 16 years old when the Lamborghini Murcielago was introduced, and it remains my favorite car. And I've owned 9 of them at this point, and I've certainly tried my best to sort of add to the provenance and the history and the significance of the cars in ways that the factory even didn't keep very good records. And so, a lot of the idea for VinWiki came out of my own expression of my personal passion for cars like these, and sort of trying to curate the perception and the history and the public understanding of what the cars are, why they are special, how rare they are, and what that ought to mean for the values. And fortunately, over the last decade or so, we've been able to see that actually reflected in the values. And so my net worth is wildly, disproportionately, and irresponsibly invested in Lamborghinis.
Nikki, how about you? Talk about, because you too, there's a nostalgic element to the cars that mean something to you.
Well, yeah, I had a mild midlife crisis, I guess you can call it that. And I woke up one day and I decided, well, how can I fix this? So I bought a Ferrari. And I bought the Ferrari that I lusted after when I was a teenager, which was a 360 Spider. I grew up in that time frame, and I love the 355 and I love the 360. I also had a 6-month stint at Ferrari. I worked there in the communications department before I went to college in the States. And then I left for a few years and lost touch with them. But that was the car at the time, and I loved that car. And a dear friend of ours, who has a significant number of cars, had this Grigio alloy model with the manual transmission, which I cannot stress enough. And the condition was perfect, and I convinced him to sell it to me, and that solved my midlife crisis. And I put on 2B exhausts and decided that I wanted to do what I'm trying to do now.
That's the right kind of midlife crisis. And the right car. I had a gated manual 360 Spider for a long time as part of the rental fleet. It was probably the highest mileage one in the country at that point. And
isn't it reliable? Ed, you tell me this. It's a reliable car.
They're all reliable as long as they don't sit. Yeah. As long as you keep putting miles on them, they are fantastic.
They will punish you if they sit. They will punish you mercilessly.
That's right. But it doesn't get much better. And it's one of those cars that the first time you saw it, it just had such an impression on you. And I think as we create a thread of cars that have, maintained or developed a long-term value, it has to be something that just slaps you in the face the first time you come across one. The way people always talk about reacting to a Countach or a Miura or a 250 Ferrari of any sort. The impact that these have in the first moment is what leads to the allure and the desire and the fascination that results in ultra long-term value.
No, and just the way it sounds, because of all the climate regulations, and I'm not going to discuss those, but because it's just 5 valves per cylinder, titanium conrods, and that aspirated engine, you can't beat that. It sounds like thunder on earth, and it sounds like a soprano. It's something that just gets you inside. I can't live without it. When I drive that car, I'm happy, and if it makes you happy, it can't really be that bad.
I think
that had to be the most enthusiastic. That had to be the most enthusiastic response to how a car feels that I've ever heard in my entire life. So I applaud you for that. That's great.
Amen. So I'm waiting for my midlife crisis and for a car to slap me across the face.
It'll happen.
That's it.
Let's go to segment 2.
Classic car collecting transcends mere passion, emerging as a strategic investment with the potential for substantial returns. Rarity and history drive the market, with icons like the 1963 Ferrari 250 GTO commanding a record $70 million, highlighting the financial power of these rolling masterpieces. Investors are drawn to these assets, which often eclipse traditional investments. Valuations hinge on expert assessments of condition, rarity, and market trends, while specialized financial services offer loans against these prized vehicles. Despite their allure, classic cars navigate a landscape of market fluctuations. Investors must balance enthusiasm with due diligence. Our exploration will illuminate the financial intricacies of classic car collecting, offering a guide to those ready to engage with this unique investment avenue.
So I saw a quote from collector Bruce Meyer where he said, "Buy the best example of what you want and pay whatever it takes. That way you cry only once." Ed, I think your approach sounds like it's at the polar opposite of that. Can you talk about buying a car? And I'm thinking of one that I think once belonged to an Iranian terrorist drug smuggler.
Yeah, it did. It did. Yeah, my motto is to buy the worst examples of the coolest cars on earth, and I attempt to do that every single day when I wake up. I've bought the worst of every example of car that I've ever had, and I love that because I can play Russian roulette with significant maintenance expense and repair, but I am wildly allergic to depreciation. And so the best way to avoid that is to make sure that I am starting at the very bottom of the market. And it's pretty easy in most cases to talk the seller of the worst car that exists into selling it to you way behind the market, making it a little bit better, and then selling it either right behind the market or in the middle of the market, and generally creating some kind of a profit. And so that has worked for me. But honestly, it only works in the things that you are really passionate about enough to become sufficiently educated and to buy them in the right way, enough behind the market to deal with the inevitable reconditioning that's going to happen.
Are there certain things that scare you away? Or do you know specifically what can be repaired and what's salvageable and you can bring up to a level that you think will be acceptable?
That's a great question. Nothing scares me at all. The worse the car gets, the more I am interested. If it was crashed in extra time, that is great because I will get the car cheaper. All of it can be addressed. All of it can be brought back. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how bad the Carfax looks. You can still drive it to Cars and Coffee and park it next to the one that the guy paid 3 times as much for, and they look the same. And that's what I love, is not having to worry about anything, putting as many miles as I possibly can. Pretty much every car that I have is the highest mileage example of whatever that car is on earth. And the more that I can do that, the more I get to enjoy them. Now, that is not to say that I'm some Dave Ramsey of car advice and the only way is my way. That's just what works for me. And what I love about the automotive hobby is that when everybody says they love cars, it means something different. I want to be able to own cars inexpensively and drive them as much as possible. And this is my recipe. If you want your car to be perfect and you don't like error lights flashing in your face as you go down the road, that's not the way. If you want to detail your car to contour perfection, that's not the way. If you really don't want to have to sit there and fix stuff before you go and you want to know that your car is going to start every time you ask it to, that's not the way. It just works for me.
There's something beautiful about seeing the potential of something that everybody else thinks is a mess. So I think that's a cool example. That it's a cool example to see that you can put the work in and turn it into something beautiful.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if it was owned by a washed up rapper or a prostitute or an Iranian terrorist. At the end of the day, I've driven them all and they all work great. And so I think that the more that you can narrow your sights in on what the actual vision is of ownership, which in my case is guiltless miles, that helps you to figure out exactly what you want to identify so that you can go out and find the right one.
Ed, Garrett, talk about your muscle cars, because it seems like I think one of your first, you could buy it at a price that was affordable, Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, so I'm the youngest guy in this panel, I can imagine, and I don't have the funds that at the current moment to be able to reach back in the years of the muscle cars that I want to own. Hopefully, in the near future, I will be able to. But when I was approached by some of the companies that I work with, sponsors of mine, to build a car, I had to think. I'm like, okay, well, what can I afford, and what's going to be hot, what's going to be cool, coming up soon. So being a 90s kid and in 2000s, the 90s cars, they're starting to have some allure, but they're not quite classics yet, and to some degree. So I had to go back a little bit even into the 80s. And that's when I was like, okay, I was poised between a Monte Carlo or like a G-body or a third gen Camaro. And I figured the G-body kind of would suit me a little more. And so that's what I went with. And the Monte Carlo SS, I'll argue to this day, it's probably has one of the prettiest body lines of really any muscle car ever made, in my opinion. When you step back and you look at it, they're absolutely gorgeous cars. And so that's what I decided to go with. And I kind of lucked out, because if you look at the market right now for G bodies, I bought my car around six years ago. I bought it for $5,200 running, driving. And of course we blew it apart and did everything else like that. But I turned down $80,000 for my car. When, if you look back and you look at Grand Nationals, which are heralded to be the epitome of G bodies, those just a few years ago, a really nice example was only selling for 30, 40. I mean, now they're getting up there. If you get a low mile one, they're selling close to 100. But my point is, the 80s cars have, gone to another plateau, just like the 70s stuff has, just because the demographic of people, that was the stuff that they grew up liking, when, if they grew up in the late 80s to mid 90s, the 80s stuff was hot. You got Fox body Mustangs, you got third gen Camaros, early square body C10s. So, it just worked out that way. But I think the 80s and 90s cars are going to start having that same prominence that the 70s and 60s stuff had.
It was a nice
I got ripped
purchase.
his arm off at 80 grand now.
Yeah, I know. But listen, Ed, we'll have a conversation about this if it doesn't come up later. But that my car has a deep story to it that you'll actually like. So that's the only reason I didn't part ways with it, man. It's got a real sentimental value to me.
I can't fault you for that.
We got to hear that story.
I can do a condensed version of it later on.
Okay. Ray, you mentioned, since Garrett proudly announced that he's the youngest, Ray being the senior statesman here,
78.
You talked about very early, traveling to go buy a car.
Yeah.
And I think that you've continued to do that. You're always searching. What do you look for when it comes to what's available, what you're willing to pay? What's that hunt like?
Well, I naturally right now I'm on a fixed income. So what I do is, first of all, I go out maybe on Craigslist, and I make a big circle to Cleveland, to Boston, to Virginia, see what the cars that I like are going for. And when, if I see something I like, I'll make arrangements to go see it. I've driven almost to Philadelphia, up to Boston, Cleveland. Yeah, I've driven around. Haven't come home with too many though, because they're not what people say they are. But I don't know. I just know how much I can afford. And I always say there's something out there if you don't rush into it. If you know what you want, sooner or later you'll find what you want, or at least as close to what you want that you can afford. My dream car I can't afford, so I don't even think about that.
What's your dream car?
It would be a 49, 50, or 51 Mercury chopped convertible. And I did find one about 3-4 years ago, but it was 75 grand. And I would have had to sell my house. So naturally, I don't have it. But I like convertibles. I like Mercuries.
your goal is to own one car at a time, right? Because you want to
Well,
drive it.
yeah, I did. I just sold my 51 Mercury four-door I had, Continental kit, sun visor, dummy spotlights, 302 Ford. I just sold that. It's a long story, but I sold it back to the guy that I bought it from. I had it for about 5-6 years, and he gave me $500 more than I paid for it. But it was a nice car. But now insurance, I got my wife's car, I got my pickup truck, I got my 63, I had the 51 Mercury. I just had to cut back a little, but, I still look though, because you never know. I still look.
Nikki, how about you in being in Tuscany? How does that impact pricing and the cars that you look for?
Well, Tuscany doesn't really impact the pricing that much, and Italy doesn't either. I think it's price-wise, it's more of a European Union thing, meaning that, for instance, my 360 or any other car is available through a European network of sellers. Everyone advertises online, and our prices are pretty much the prices that you'll have anywhere in the European continent. With the exception of Great Britain, of course, after Brexit, that's not EU, but still, the reason I was looking through websites for prices of my car, which since I bought it in March has gone up about 10K because it's manual, and it really did go up about 8 to 10K, I would say. And I saw prices in England, and they were like 20,000 less, and I wasn't thinking. I thought, have I been that stupid? Why didn't I go buy it over there? And then I thought, of course, they're right-hand drive cars. They have their own market, and that was silly of me. But Tuscany doesn't really influence the price. It influences the experience. You sell something in no offense to our German friends, in the Black Forest of Germany in winter. That's a sad state of affairs. We were shooting in the Val d'Orcia yesterday, close to between Siena and Chiusi, and it was just spectacular. The sunsets were great. I mean, obviously, if it's not raining, we do have wonderful weather, wonderful countryside, and we take advantage of that. And it's just fun to do. We stop in every little town, and you have a coffee or a little specialty, and you meet the old men playing cards outside of the bars. Not bars in the US sense of it, but cafes in the European sense. It's just a fun experience. That adds value to not to the car itself, because you can buy it in France and Germany for the same price. It adds value to the experience.
As far as like the financial aspect of these cars, is it a matter of from listening to all of you guys, it seems like the pricing has had a pretty good run here. And I would assume that that's connected to the economy, the stock market. We haven't had a recession in a long time. Is it only like during something like a financial crisis where you see prices actually go down?
I wouldn't say necessarily. Sometimes vehicles just go out of style, or and I hate to say this, but like certain vehicles, the demographic of ownership may be a lot older, and sadly, when you see those owners start to get too old to drive them, or they pass away, they don't have the same value or the same interest to any other person that would want to buy them. So the prices of them goes down, and you'll see that with like 32 Fords, right? At one point in time, like a 32 Ford Highboy, we're selling for 200, a nicely built one, we're selling for $150,000, $200,000. And nowadays you can go and buy like a really, really nice driver, well built for $50,000. And that's an incredible buy for something like that. But again, those vehicles had their time with a certain demographic. And so it's always going to be that way as vehicles get older, and the level of knowledge that goes into maintaining them and keeping them on the road slowly starts to dwindle. I feel like those cars are going to have less appeal, and value is going to go down because people can't afford to drive them, or they can't afford to, or they don't know how to keep them running.
Yeah, there's a ton of truth to that. We see cars in general appreciate around, 20 to 30 years old as the kids that grew up loving them are suddenly of the means to start to buy them. In some cases, because of discontinuation or rarity or exclusivity, we'll see spikes earlier on. But then eventually it starts to die off. And that may be what we've seen in pre-war cars years ago. It's what we're starting to see in muscle cars. And certainly Ray's 49 Mercury is about to become a lot more affordable just because the demand goes down. And so there's not limitless demand, even though the supply does start to wane. And so right now, yes, 80s, 90s, early 2000s cars are going crazy because the people that grew up watching them blast by or being parked in the valet somewhere are starting to develop the funds or the credit to be able to buy them. And the credit markets have been quite favorable lately. And so, that is what steers the ability of people to buy the cars. We also have other factors. Nick could go around buying 23 to 24-year-old cars that we didn't get in the U.S. and then just start throwing them on U.S. Craigslist and double his money all the time, because that's an arbitrage between a market that can't have them until all of a sudden they're 25 years old and they're free to come into the U.S. And there's tons of examples of cars that will do that over and over again. That's not an investment in the traditional sense. That is an arbitrage, which is easily confused as an investment. And so when we hear about cars as an investment, cars only increase in value for 4 reasons. They are reconditioned. They have profit from a dealership, so a wholesale to retail margin. They appreciate or they experience an arbitrage. And again, those last 2 get confused an awful lot.
Thank you for that. Yeah,
I can do that?
All day long. All day long. Go buy you a bunch of 2000 360 Challenge cars and just sit there and wait 18 months.
Oh God, yes, the 360 Challenge. That's an interesting market. But we're lucky with Ferrari. And I'd like to introduce one aspect, and this has been driving me nuts over the past year because I follow the markets, and I get the impression in the European Union, so you may be experiencing different in the States, that the car not to buy right now, and I'm not talking about vintage, but I'm talking about cars that are 2 to 7, 8 years old. The car to not buy right now is Porsche.
Yes, 100%.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean,
And why
Porsche
is
has had a
It's
wonderful
ridiculous.
time in the marketplace, especially since 2013. We've seen radical appreciation in the GT cars of all generations.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's been brilliant. It was somewhat artificially induced by some activities of the factory. But at the end of the day, yes, it has been a wonderful decade to own Porsche cars, regardless of how much you actually like driving them. But I agree with you. Right now, they are softening, and they are softening fast. Porsche is building more GT series cars than they are Carreras. Which is because they can charge another $100,000 on the MSRPs and sell them because the waiting lists are so long. That comes to roost eventually, and we are certainly seeing it right now. The meteoric rise of Carrera GTs got softened very, very much by the factory telling everyone that owns one to park it and not drive it for the next year because it's unsafe. And so there's nothing that stops a car's appreciation in its tracks with like something like that. But yes, I mean, I think when we look at the criteria of what makes a car primed for appreciation or an increase in value, a lot of the things about Porsches like exclusivity, having a manual transmission, being available in unique colors and things like that have gone crazy. But it's gone a little bit too crazy. I mean, if you look at examples of, the 997 GT3 RS, especially the second part of the 997 one, what we call a 997.2. For $5,500, you could have ordered paint to sample, which at the time was not that big of a deal. But today, just because the cars are painted a unique shade of blue, they can bring $400,000 more on a car that is just over a decade old. Now that is crazy. And those are the kind of things that the market is just starting to correct on. And in those cases, the market is probably correct.
It pays to know your stuff. All right, we're going to go to segment 3.
In the collector's odyssey, the fusion of discovery and diligence is paramount. The digital realms of eBay Motors, Hemmings, ClassicCars.com, and Bring a Trailer offer gateways to hidden automotive treasures. while local car shows and auctions pulse with potential finds. Knowledge is the collector's compass. Market trends and vehicle conditions are the stars by which to navigate. A classic car's body, engine, and interior narrate its history, each detail a clue to its value. Documentation is crucial. The title and maintenance history charting a course to legitimate ownership. Car clubs and forums buzz with insider leads, transforming whispers into the reality of one's collection. With classic car values ascending, each acquisition is a calculated move in a market ripe with investment potential. This segment charts a collector's journey from curiosity to conquest through the vibrant landscape of classic car collecting.
So I want to ask Garrett about the story of his car.
Okay. All right. So I'll make this brief. So I bought the car in 2017 in December out of Las Vegas. I already had companies come on board to help me with the project. I acquired more and more. We got the car going, and in about 2018, we got the car running, driving, and we took it on Hot Rod Power Tour 2019. That was the first show the car had ever been to. It only had seen miles just around town on break-in, and we literally wrenched on the car the night before we left to go on the trip. So we drove from Atlanta to Concord, North Carolina, which is just outside of Charlotte, to ZMAX, which is the first stop of the Hot Rod Power Tour, and went to the pre-meet the first night, parked at the hotel, everything was fine. Second night we went to the show, or second day we went to the show, came back, parked at the hotel, woke up the next morning, and that was the time everybody was getting ready to leave to go to the next stop. And I just happened to look out the window because I heard cars starting. I look out the window, I look over to where my car was parked, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's where I parked it last night. And I asked my buddy who was with me, I was like, is that where I parked the car? He's like, I don't know. And so then it finally hit me. I was like, there's no way somebody stole my car that night. And mine, along with four of the cars that morning. So it was mine, 80 Malibu wagon that was parked just to the left of me, and then three other 90s GM vehicles from a different hotel down the road. And it took a little over a month for me to be notified that my car was found. The only saving grace that I have for my car in my possession and not completely demolished, or actually demolished at all, was the fact that because of my social media following, immediately after it happened, I took to my friends and it got blown up on social media. I mean, everybody and their mother, people I didn't know, were sharing about it, that it was stolen. And the only thing I can think is that the people who stole it, somebody must have told them who I was or the heat that was on it, and they ditched it. And then so many weeks later, some kids found it ditched in a field about two towns over from where we were. And then I was able to buy the car back from it, because ironically, the insurance had just paid me a week before I had gotten the letter from the police department saying they had found the car, because me and my parents had just moved, and so it took a minute for the letter to get to our new address. And so I had just gotten paid, and then I got the letter, and I went and bought the car back from insurance. So it was insane. That's one of the craziest stories. Yeah, one of the craziest stories, man. And the only thing I wish is that they found who stole the cars, because sadly the three other people that their cars were taken, they didn't find them. The only other car that was found was the 80 Malibu wagon, and sadly his was vandalized, but he still got it back, and he worked in paint and body, so he was able to get the car back right. But it was an unfortunate series of events, but I'm just thankful that I was able to get my car back and in condition that it's still drivable.
Man, when you love your car as much as you do, and you put the effort in to build it, how did you feel emotionally when you don't see the car parked where it's supposed to be?
Okay, so obviously this being my first hot rod, it wasn't my first vehicle I built, but it was my first hot rod, and I had a lot of heart into this, mainly because getting back to the social media thing, the time that I put into building my channel and building the relationships that I did with the companies, and then for them to want to work with me and sponsor me on parts. Like that all meant a lot to me. And then for all of it to just be gone in a blink of an eye without me having any way to stop it, well, I felt powerless. I felt defeated. And then knowing how this goes with especially with older cars, I didn't have anything in me to think that the car was going to be found. If I didn't have any concrete evidence after like the first few hours, I was just like, it's over with. This car is gone. So I pretty much gave up, and yeah, I was just in a rut, man, for like a month. But the best part about the whole thing was the fact that so many people had my back. Like all the companies that worked with me came to me and told me, they were like, don't worry about it. We got your back. The next vehicle you get, don't worry, we got you. You know, I had companies offer to give me a new project vehicle for free to start. So I just felt a lot of love, man. It was genuinely the most humbling experience to just people that you don't really even have that much of a connection with come together and willing to help you. It was one of the most heartfelt things I've ever experienced in my life.
Ed, I've heard you say that the backstory, even if there's a bad history, enriches the ownership. Can you share a story where VinWiki helped you to find a hidden gem?
Well, we found a lot of interesting cars, but I think when you talk about a car that if it hadn't been for the theft, the recovery, and the community behind him, Garrett would have sold the car when he got a great offer for it. But like he said, now he's attached to it for very good reason, because when he can share that not only is this car a car he dreamt of, a car he lusted after, a car he put together and built with his bare hands, you know, it's also a car that represents what he's accomplished professionally. And so, you know, there are cars I very nearly bought a Lamborghini I didn't need just because 6 years ago, we found the car after it had been stolen for 6 years. Now, I didn't have any attachment to the car. I just happened to drive by it in a Target parking lot, and I knew there were not supposed to be any orange 2008 Superleggeras in Georgia at the time. And so I figured out what it was, where it was from, and you know, through our app, we figured out what the VIN was, and we were able to get in touch with the people that would have owned it and help them to get it back. It was a longer story, but at the end of the day, the idea, I'd much rather own that one than a not stolen one, just because I'd get to tell people about that every time they're like, oh, where do you like your car?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
How about you, Ray? You've been quiet over there in your corner.
I remember back when the Chrysler Sebrings were getting popular. My wife and I went to look at a Sebring convertible, at a brand new one at the dealership, took it for a ride. But when I brought it back, I said to myself, well, gee, if we look for a classic car or a street rod convertible, I says, and we keep it in good shape, it'll hold its value. Where if we bought the Sebring, as soon as we drove it off the lot, we'd lose value. So what happened was, only a couple weeks later, I found a 72 Chevelle convertible, a red one, black interior, really a nice car. I paid $12,000 for it. And I had it about 5-6 years. And I decided I wanted something else. So I sold it and I got $12,000 out of it. Or if I would have bought the Sebring, I would have lost money on it, you know, unless I kept it for 30 years or something, you know. So.
Smart.
That is exactly
I
right.
thought, you know, it was good for me. You know, it was a good deal for me. So, you know,
And Andy, that's a good moment to just be very, very clear on a video with the title that this one has. Cars are not an investment.
yeah,
Cars are a wonderful hobby. And
yeah,
hobbies work the best when you maximize the residual value of the things that you need to buy to do them. And therefore, if we think about the factors that make cars retain their value, we minimize the cost. We just saw last weekend, Sotheby's sold one of the most expensive cars ever to sell at auction, the second most expensive, in fact, a 250 GTO. It was a Series 1 car, one of the only ones that was actually campaigned by the factory. Really special, not necessarily born as a 250, but made by Ferrari into a 250 GTO, one of 39 cars. At some points been thought of as the most valuable types of car in the world, and it sold for a hammer price of $48 million, more than $51 million in fees. Now, that car obviously has had a long-term, very significant increase in value. But a good friend of mine, Steve Leto, who's an attorney in Michigan, grew up next door to that car. And his neighbor sold that car around 1980 for $1 million. Now, you would think that said owner that missed out on the other $50 million of appreciation would feel really bad. But no car has ever beaten the stock market for more than a decade. And there have been many moments where cars beat the stock market by a lot over a very short period of time, but that does not sustain. And so that prompted me, the result of this, with the knowledge of when it had sold, looking back, guess what the stock market has returned since 1980? 12,000%. So $1 million invested in a reasonable way in 1980 is $120 million today. More than twice what he would have had making the actual smartest automotive buying decision that any human being could. And so I think it's just really, really important that we are clear that investing in cars is a strategy to mitigate the cost of a hobby. It is not the best place to park your money long term.
Well, I've never bought a car as an investment. I bought it to enjoy, drive it, and hopefully get my money out of it when I sell it. And so far, I've been very, very lucky. And but I do know people that have cars and they think they've got gold. You know what I mean? They think they're a lot more value than what I think they are, anyways. But to each his own,
The worst category of people I find, and I think it's transatlantic too, is people that keep their cars like you put plastic on your sofas at home.
Yep.
It makes no sense. I don't understand it. I'm sorry. Then sell it to someone like me if you have to do that, or sell it to someone else who loves cars. If you don't use your cars, then there's no passion in that. There's just cold calculation. So go invest on the stock market. Do that. You'll get a better return over a longer period of time. Cars have a soul. I'm sentimental about this.
I use my cars. I don't misuse them. You know what I mean? You'll see my car at the Tops grocery store. You'll see it at a Walmart. What I do, though, is I try to park way far away so nobody parks next to me, because a lot of people don't like to walk. So I park way far away.
That is proven to not necessarily work, because people will take that as an invitation to be like, this guy thinks he's special. And then they'll go park right next to you, and you'd be like, what the hell, man?
I know. That has happened, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that happens to you a lot.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Well, but it's easy to make those kinds of people the punching bag of the automotive hobby, to say that if you are going to only care about the preservation of value or the condition of your car, that you're not a true enthusiast. And while it is very different than the demeanor of most car enthusiasts, it still is not wrong. Again, this is a hobby, not an investment activity. And if what makes them feel good is the belief that they have put their car in the greatest condition that it can, and they are doing what it takes to preserve that condition, then it's okay for that to be the way that they enjoy it. And it's honestly what keeps these cars around for us to eventually buy them and drive them like crazy. I bought it recently because it had 49,800 miles as a Lamborghini, and somebody thought it was radically going to change the value. And I sent him a picture of me driving it home from their house in the rain, passing 50,000 miles. And I'm sure he had a minor aneurysm, but that was because I was treating it differently. It doesn't mean that he didn't have an amazing ownership experience, and he did make a good bit of money on this car. But at the end of the day, I think I'll have more fun owning it the way that I want to own it.
Oh, yeah. To each his own. Yep.
I like that.
Fair enough.
To each his own. So let's go to segment 4.
At the heart of classic car collecting lies a pivotal choice: preserve the vehicle's original essence or embrace the art of modification. Preservationists advocate for historical fidelity, maintaining the car's factory finishes and original mechanics, honoring the narrative embedded in each component. Modifiers, however, champion personal expression and modernization, enhancing performance and updating aesthetics to reflect individual tastes and contemporary standards. This debate transcends mere preference, touching on the core values of authenticity, heritage, and innovation. A meticulously preserved classic may captivate with its authenticity, while a thoughtfully modified counterpart might offer a more personalized, exhilarating experience. We explore this intricate balance, the delicate dance between maintaining the past's allure and steering towards a customized future, a testament to the classic car's enduring legacy and its evolving journey in the hands of collectors.
So this is a great segment to get into, since we were just talking about using your car. Ray, I want to ask you, because you mentioned that you love chopped cars. So can you talk about like modifications versus the idea of preservation?
Well, I like to smoke the tires. I don't care about beating anybody. I like to smoke the tires, go sideways, you know. Matter of fact, the 163 I had was Pro Street, had it tubbed out, roll caged, had line lock on it. And when I had the interior done, I had the guy hide a windshield washer unit in my trunk, squirting on the rear tires. So
That's awesome.
when I wanted to add a little extra smoke when I did the burnouts. So I don't know. I just like driving and using the car. I mean, it's fun. And matter of fact, if I don't go to shows much, I do like to go to cruise-ins. Poker runs are nice because at least they're driving around. But I know people that are really into trophies. They're into trophies. Where me, if somebody walks by and says, "Hey, I like your car. That's nice." To me, that's a trophy. You know, that's I'm not a trophy hunter. You know, I mean, I just like to drive and enjoy them. I've taken people for rides. I've been at cruise-ins or something. Somebody will come by, want to take a picture of the car. I said, "Give me your camera. You want to sit in? I'll take a picture of it." You know, stuff like that. To me, that's fun.
That is fun. Garrett,
Yeah.
did I see a video of you on YouTube smoking your tires?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. So going back to the story of when I got the car back, it was still in North Carolina, and it was just around the corner from Detroit Speed, which is the company that actually sponsored me on the suspension for my car. And when I was able to buy it back, I had my buddy go pick the car up, and in that time frame, they held on to it for me and made sure and went over the car, make sure everything was good, and then they brought it to LS Fest East in Bowling Green, Kentucky, that September, and that's the first time I had seen the car in about 3 months after it had gotten stolen. And as you can imagine, it was a very emotional reunitement, and I proceeded to be asked to do the burnout contest, which they do every year, and I was the first one to go. I've done burnouts before, but for whatever reason, I was so anxious. I was so anxious to do one, and I put that car out there in that big old open pit, and I just let it eat. Like, I kid you not, I was so close to blowing up the motor in that car. If I had probably gone another 10 seconds, I probably would have blown the head gaskets out of that car. But I didn't care. I was so happy to have the car back, and so. But believe it or not, the car it saw 257 degrees, and I'm still on those same head gaskets. So that's just a testament to how strong an LS motor is. But yeah, I'm. The thing about me is I kind of have, sadly, I kind of have perfectionist tendencies because I've been so immersed in this automotive culture that I've been around some of the nicest cars built by the nicest, best shops around the country. And I just look at those as like where I'd like my car to be. And so I'm hypercritical about every little thing about my car to the point where sometimes I even I'm just like, I don't even want to show it because I'm just like, I see the little imperfections, and I got to remind myself, it's like, no, I mean, I built this car to be driven. And the fact that it has these battle scars, that I shouldn't be afraid to just take it out, because it's like, who cares? It's not so perfect that I can't enjoy it, but it's a weird line that I toe with, getting out and enjoying the car when it's not broke, and then trying to get it to a level that I really want it to be at. because like Ray said, I really don't care about trophies. My trophy is the fact that, again, people like the car, people come up to me and tell me, hey man, I love your car on social media. You got the baddest G body out there, da da da. That warms my heart. But I just, for whatever in my mind, I just want my car to be to this certain standard. And I'm sure it'll get there at some point. Again, it's like anything else, it's just money and time. So it'll get there.
I have this thing with, you mentioned scars, which I think is interesting. I had a good friend, and this doesn't have to do with cars necessarily, and he got into a bad accident, and he messed up his face badly, and then he went through surgeries and all that, but you could still see some scars. And I said, well, how does this make you feel? Do you feel comfortable with it? Have you accepted this? And I think it's valid for cars as well as for human beings in a certain sense. And he said, every scar is a signature by God. And that stuck with me. So
that's deep.
The scars.
Yeah, that's deep.
Keep the
I
scars.
saw a car in Monterey. There's a guy with a Ferrari Enzo that has 80,000 miles on it. He drove it out from Boston to Southern California, to Northern California for the show. Scarred up, cracked windshield, rock chips galore. And I'm like, that is my favorite car here by so many miles that it is just the greatest thing ever. I made a mistake in building a car. I bought it and had it painted. And I clear brawled the car right afterwards. And I'll be honest, I immediately regretted it because I wanted the rock chips. When I had a 360 Spider, just like Nick's, the front of it was white. It was a red car, Rosso Corsa, and it was so chipped up because they use this terrible, cheap one-stage paint to paint Ferraris. It's nothing special in case anybody was behind the mystique. And I loved so much to pull up and people see it and go, oh, it looks awful. And they're like, no, it looks like I drove it here and I'm on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Ed, you have a video where you called one of your cars the worst manual LP640 Roadster on earth. Because I think the assumption is, like, if you have $1 million car, you'd assume that the owner is a purist and wants to keep it. But I think the previous owner did some crazy things to that car.
Yes. So long before it was $1 million car, it was ordered new by Ralph Lauren, but he didn't take delivery of it because it was mid-recession. It was a 2009 car. And so it was sold to some guy in New Jersey that drove it like a 20-year-old Taurus. And it's a matte
New Jersey
car from the Lamborghini factory. They call the color Nero Nemesis. And he would crash it all the time. And he, when he did, he would just use the insurance money to buy cheap, like kit car aftermarket body panels and then pocket the rest of the money. And
goodness.
If it didn't amount to an insurance claim, he carried around a can of black Rust-Oleum spray paint. And he would just spray paint over the damages. And so my car, and the last one sold for more than $1 million more than I paid for it, has circles of spray paint on every panel. And it looks atrocious. And it's the highest mileage one that exists. And I actually discovered recently, after I bought it, a news story that the guy that bought it scammed a mentally ill person into buying it on his behalf. And this was revealed by the body shop that was fixing the non-insurable repair that he achieved when crashing it so far beyond the legal limit of intoxication. He was not abiding by Nick's filming rules. It was a big deal. And so, which is great. I bought it with 2 accidents. After I bought it, I got a bonus accident. And so that's just a better story. And so, but no, I love the car. There are 16 of them on earth with a manual transmission. It is so much the next Timmy Cuda convertible that nobody can argue with me. And I drive it like crazy.
I'm glad it had a happy ending. Nicky looks like he recovered from his aneurysm. So let's go to segment 5 and we'll bring it home.
In the realm of classic car collecting, the hum of engines is a siren call to a fellowship of enthusiasts. Car shows and rallies are the grand stages where stories and passions converge. and the beauty of automotive history is celebrated in collective reverence. The classic car culture is a bridge between eras, now drawing millennials into its fold, ensuring the vibrancy of this community doesn't just endure, but evolves. Museums stand as bastions of inspiration, sparking lifelong passions with their storied exhibits. Car clubs and digital forums are the lifeblood of this community, sanctuaries for sharing wisdom and forging bonds that defy distance. These networks are invaluable, built on a foundation of mutual respect for the craft and love for the classic. Beyond the chrome and leather, it's the sense of belonging that fuels collectors. It's a world where each member is a guardian of tradition, and every classic car is a vessel of shared delight. In this narrative, we explore the essence of classic car collecting, a symphony of history, community, and the joy of the drive.
I saw a Malcolm Gladwell interview. I think that was Bring a Trailer, and he was talking about going to that website and it having a negative impact on his productivity. But his point was there's so many toxic places on the internet to go hang out. And usually the comment section is like the last thing you want to read. Mm-hmm. But his observation was that in the car world, he felt like it was this safe place that he found people were very nice, very supportive, and it was just a cool place to be. Ray, can you talk a little bit about your car club and the annual award that you hand out? Because this is all about community.
Yeah, we our car club started out as a normal car club, but then it kind of got into just a bunch of friends with families, and we involved our spouses and the kids and everything, and done more cruising than we did car shows. And then most of us are up there in age, and two of our members passed away, and they were two guys where I could call any time of the day or night and say, hey, want to go here, want to go there, and they would go. So what we're just a group now. Matter of fact, since COVID and that, we don't even have dues paid, and we just get together. We gather on Sundays for breakfast at a local restaurant. Just fun together. Cruising together, going here, going there.
What's the trophy you guys used to give out?
Yeah, I used to make out funny trophies, gag trophies, like if somebody. Oh gosh, what was that? The bent piston award. Whoever had the worst luck in the last 12 months, I would get a little plate made, and it must have been 20 years old because there were 20 different plates on it. It was called the Bent Piston Award. Whoever had the worst luck, or like if we were cruising and something happened to the car, they had to pull over or something like that. Whoever had the worst bad luck would get that trophy. I'd surprise them at our banquet at the end of the year.
That's funny.
So, funny. Stuff like just fun stuff. There are some serious car clubs around, but I don't know. I just like fun. People like seeing me ride the car. Or they'll ask me sometimes, like I'll take some of the kids in the neighborhood, some of the friends of my two grandsons, and then sometimes I'll ride them to school in the convertible. The day's nice, put the top down, drive them to school.
That's awesome.
Parades, stuff like that. It's just fun. I enjoy the car.
That's cool. I was joking earlier that he looks like Santa Claus with his beard, but he does in his community.
Yeah.
He's Santa Claus in the wintertime. So he's part of the community, and all the kids are happy to see him.
That's one of the things.
I don't know if you can see it or not. Probably not.
Oh, yes.
Nice.
I bought my grandson an elf hat last year. So nice. We rang the bell for the Goodwill. We rang the bell for a Goodwill at the grocery store a couple of days. it's fun. People come in with their kids in the shopping cart. I say, hey, you want a picture with Santa? Oh, yeah, can I? Yeah, sure. It's just fun. Kids are, it's fun being around kids.
Always a good cause.
Yeah.
Garrett, with your 2 million followers, you mentioned that the love that you felt when your car was stolen. Like, talk a little bit about community and when you go to car shows.
I think it's great when you're in person. Social media, I think, has kind of sadly washed things down a lot because, and I'm sure Ed can attest to this. You get a lot of people that just feel like they have to put an opinion out there that it's not positive for whatever reason. They just speak all the negative things out of their mind on social media just because they know that they don't have to face any consequences from it, or they don't, they're not worried about how it's going to maybe impact somebody's feelings about the vehicle or whatever the case may be. But in person, you usually see is when you see all the love, actually, like the appreciation and the all the accolades that come from your hard work. People will come to you and they'll want to know about the car. They'll want to talk about it. They'll tell you, whether or not like their dad had one or they used to have one. And it's just this beautiful thing to just be able to connect with some random person over something, just a piece of metal, basically. But I feel like, like I said, social media has kind of muddied it a little bit, because while you still will get, people that show appreciation and show, love, you'll get the people that'll just spout off and just talk bad for no reason. And it's like, they didn't live by that adage of your parents telling you, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. And it sucks, because sometimes people that don't have thick skin, it discourages them, because they're just like, well, even though I built the car for myself, everybody, people hate it. Then why am I even going to show it? So I wish that social media was a little better about that. But in the grand scheme of it all, I think the car community is very, it's very accepting. It's very wholesome to be a part of. And when you're in a bind, I mean, people are willing to go out of their way to help you. I mean, you see that on Hot Rod Power Tour all the time. People will drive in packs, and say somebody breaks down on the side of the road, you'll have a group of people pulled over on the side of the road and they'll help each other fix the car. So it's all in all, I think the car community is just full of people that are willing to love each other and enjoy the same hobby.
Ed, what are your thoughts? I mean, you've been an entrepreneur for a long time, but I get the sense that this car community, it is something special, because you're reaching out to somebody because you're helping to connect somebody with their stolen car.
Absolutely. And you're right. The car community is extremely special because it is a unique thing to have in common with someone. If you are members of the Ferrari Club or members of the Hot Rod Power Tour or Cannonballers or anything like that, if you connect over this unique part of automotive culture, in all likelihood, the rest of your life is probably really, really different. And if it weren't for that bridge or that connection, you probably would have no interaction with this person. And so the ability for that to totally open up your perspective and enlighten you as to how different people live, and to make friendships that you never would have forged were it not for this ridiculous piece of metal and plastic and leather and everything else that we love. If it weren't for that, you would not be the same person that you are. And I think as we can encourage the automotive hobby, what we're honestly encouraging is to meet people through the cars that we love. Because just like Nick said about driving around in Tuscany, owning a Ferrari there is not the same as owning it in France or owning it in Germany or owning it in the US. The stops are different. The people are different. The enthusiasm is different, but it's all worthwhile. And I think that's the most exciting part of the hobby, is the fact that we can all come together because we agree on one thing, and then we can learn about all the other things.
Nikki, your closing thoughts?
I'm picking up on something Garrett said before, and also it ties into what Ed said. I think we have a duty to share these cars with people. Whenever someone walks up to me, and with Ferrari in Italy, it's this way. I mean, they walk up to you and and they say, can I see the car? Can I take a picture with the car? And I say, sit in it. Your kid likes it, sit in. I'll turn it on for you. You have a duty to share these things with people. They want nothing more than to partake of the joy of these machines that move humans from one place to another, whether it be for pleasure or for work or for whatever reason. It's something that gets you quicker to somewhere else. And you have a duty, if you have something like a muscle car, a classic Ferrari, a Lamborghini, you have a duty to share that with people who love it just as much as you do, but maybe don't have one. So I'm always enthusiastic when anybody stops and says, "Oh, can I look at the car?" I say, please just sit in it, turn it on if you want to. So that's my closing thought, is that you're meant to share these things with people, just like most things of value need to be shared with people. And the other thought I have, and briefly, is I experienced my first hater today, thanks to this channel. And I'm not going to name him, but it was great. And he wrote 4 white guys compensating for small penises. So obviously they weren't even observing even closely. But my answer was, on behalf of Cars in Tuscany, I must tell you, sir, that, and you can read the comment, ours isn't small. It's microscopic. Talk about tweezers, dude. Because I didn't know what else to tell him. But it was the first time for me. You guys have so much experience. So anyways, it was the first time for me, and it meant a great deal. And that's it. I mean, Andy, thank you. Your beard is awesome.
Well, thank you to the panelists for sharing their passion for cars this evening. I really enjoyed the conversation. If I can just summarize some quick takeaways from the non-car collector and non-classic car driver here. We learned that it's a hobby. It's not an investment. But despite that, I know that our panelists have had very positive experiences buying smart and seeing appreciation, being able to sell cars when they want to sell cars at a profit. And it's been interesting because then they can book that gain and buy new cars, which is part of the hunt. And the hunt is always fun. I think the other thing is that to each his own, as it was said. Yeah. So, right, owning, like car ownership, enjoying the car, it can come in many different forms, and it's very individualized. For some, it's putting the car like in a museum and just keeping it there untouched. And for others, it's meant to be driven. And the battle scars that happen to the car, if you're going to take it on the road, is part of the journey. And Nikki so eloquently embraced those scars, not only on your car, but on your body as well. So I thank the Inspired Moneymakers for watching and listening. Please follow our panelist. Ed Bolian can be found at youtube.com/VinWiki, among other places. Garrett Reed is at instagram.com/AmericanMuscleHD. Nikki's channel, you can find his Instagram account at instagram.com/CarsInTuscany.
And we need it the most, so click.
And he needs it the most because he's compensating. he needs more followers.
It's so true.
It's the only way.
Ray, do you have anywhere you want to send people to follow you?
I'm just on.
You can find
you
him
can
on
look
Facebook.
for me on Facebook. I mean, I'm not. You can look for me on Facebook, Spencerport, New York. Other than that, I'm not. I'm not all that techie. You know what I mean?
Perfect.
Ray's just out here living the dream, guys.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I would like to say one last thing.
Yep.
Especially to the 2 guys with the dark beards, that my beard is naturally black, but I dye it white because all my friends have white hair and I don't want them to feel bad. That's all.
That's nice of you, man. That's nice.
Good deal.
Well, thank you guys for taking the extra time. The conversation was so good. We've gone way over time. I want to thank the Inspired Moneymakers for joining us this evening. Please take note that we're off next week for Thanksgiving here in the U.S. Join us on November 29th for episode 15, where we are covering unleashing the power of compound interest. So we're going to be talking about one of the foundational elements of investing. Until then, please do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.
Okay. Nice meeting you.